Today's video is about GloboNote, and you'll see it's a free and open source note-taking application, or should I say really, I'm using it more for sticky notes. I am still using Obsidian for my main note-taking, and I'll explain why during the video still. And I'll also put a link below the video in the description to the video that I've done previously on Obsidian. But chiefly, I was looking for something that was like a sticky notes application. And these are sort of the things that I was looking for. It was definitely something that I needed. It needed to be cross-platform so that I could use it if necessary on Windows or Linux. Although it also runs on macOS, I needed it really to be ideally open source. And obviously when you're looking at things like sticky notes, things like text formatting with highlights and the sort of bold and other things you're seeing here is quite important for just quickly seeing what you need to see, you know, things like underlining and indenting and so on. So ideally that's quite useful just to help you make out what you're reading quickly. As I said, I wanted something to be sticky on the desktop. These are quick reference notes that I'm using really, and I'm intending to keep them on my desktop. And that is one of the reasons why, as I said, Obsidian doesn't have sticky notes. So, you know, you've got to open up the application, and I've got about 700-800 different notes in there. So, you know, it's a matter of really searching for what you're looking for. GloboNote, I want as a quick reference, always available on the desktop. Ideally, I also wanted it to sync to Markdown file notes. My intention here was it would have been great if I could have found a sticky notes app which linked the sticky note to the Markdown file. For example, say that Obsidian Markdown file, and then presented that as the sticky note. And if I updated it in Obsidian, it would update in the sticky note. But I spent a couple of days searching. I could not find anything that actually did that. In fact, most of the sticky note apps are storing their file format actually in a form of a database. So it's usually, you know, MySQL file or something similar. And it's the same with GloboNote as well. So again, if it was going to be able to do it in Markdown format as a sticky note app, then I would have maybe considered using it as my primary notes application. But I like to keep my stuff in Markdown format, mainly because it's fully portable. I can port it across anywhere. It's future proof. I can read it with any application. The moment something is in a binary format or in a database, it becomes very difficult to sort of read it in anything else, or, you know, survive the death of the application or whatever the case is. So yeah, that's mainly why I'm using this separately from Obsidian. And of course, I wanted it ideally as well to store, as I said, in plain text format files. But, you know, again, not really an option for most sticky note applications. And then GloboNote itself. So this is why I decided on it eventually. It is open source under GPL version 2. I see there was a comment there saying, but changing is not allowed. Yet, if you read through the main license, that's actually not necessarily the case, and it certainly is open source. I can, you know, just show the source code quickly to you, what it looks like. This is the SourceForge website where the source code for GloboNote is. So it is actually all available with the introduction and the help and so on. I'll have a link to this as well below the video in the description. And while we are here, I can just quickly have a look at the website as well. This is really what the website looks like. A couple of screenshots. They've got some pretty good under help and support. There's the user manual as well. And of course, they also list, I'll go through some of these features just now that I'm finding quite interesting in making use of though. So it is open source, as I said. It is Java based. Now this obviously gives it its portability that will run on the various platforms wherever you've got the Java runtime installed. So I'm using it on Linux. It does come though with a Windows EXE itself, and that is actually quite easy for Windows users, because obviously if you just download it with the Windows EXE, then, you know, you just click the EXE and you've got your notes really running. The format, as I said, is not in plain text. It does convert it to XHML here, and it's storing it though in an Apache Derby database. So it's not storing it in plain text, but inside the database it is in XHTML format. And in the case of Linux, it is storing it under the, well, this is fairly arbitrary. I'm by default storing it in my home directory and then a subdirectory GloboNote, .globonote data notes. That is the subdirectory, but it stores it in under the main directory. But again, you'll see in the app, you can save the notes folders anywhere you want to. It can be, on a C drive, a D drive, a Linux home directory. You can store it wherever you want to, really. Its last release was in 2020, so it's not regularly updated. But again, if you think about it, a sticky notes app that is working, it doesn't really need monthly updates, quite honestly. So it's still fairly recent as far as I'm concerned. You can also share a folder across operating systems. So for example, in something like Dropbox or a Nextcloud sync folder, something like that. And it'll also run off a portable USB stick or memory stick. So again, quite, sort of easy to work with. I have mentioned already some massive customization and rich features, and you can already see that in the format of this particular note here. You can see it's got bullet numbers here. You can indent the bullet numbers. You can do font sizes, colors. I'll show some of these settings you can change just now. And then things like the behavior. If you look at things like auto and manual roll up, this is now fixed as in roll down, if you want to call it, full view of the note itself. But if you take, for example, here above it, the nano editor one, if you click on it, it's going to roll down and it auto rolls up. So if I lose focus on that, you'll see it rolls up. That's the auto roll up. This at the moment is in a manual mode, so I'm just keeping this particular note actually open, and you can scroll on it and whatever else you want to do there. You've got an option also to make it always on top, and it's as easy as really just clicking there and going to properties and choosing to keep this note always on top. And if I did that, for example, if I did always on top and I now brought the browser back in, you'll see it stays on top of the note even though I'm clicking places here on the browser screen. It's still on top. And likewise, if you take one of these other ones and you choose always on top, that rolled up note is always going to show. It doesn't matter if I'm clicking here on the browser anywhere, you'll see it actually stays there and it's available to roll up or down. So you can play around with those settings really to decide how you sort of want to display your notes, roll up, roll down format. You can also lock notes. Lock basically just means that it can't just be edited. You're going to have to just click it to unlock to edit. And again, it'll be under properties and lock note over there. The option just below it is protect. And if you protect it, I've got a password already preset actually, so that's probably why it hasn't really done anything. And I'll show you what a note is going to do just now with a locked note. But you'll see here in the top it shows a little key symbol over there indicating it's now a locked note. So let me just a protected encrypted note. It is a little bit clunky maybe on the navigation side, the fact that you don't sort of have toolbars or floating toolbars or anything like that. I mean, if you do want to change some text, you really got to highlight the text. I think just let's zoom a little bit further out, unfortunately, because otherwise I'm not going to get these menus in. But if you right click and you go to edit text, you'll see you can go down here and choose things like bold, italic, underline, strikeout. So yes, the menu system, if you're going to use that, can be a bit clunky, but there are a lot of shortcuts, and these are quite commonly used shortcuts like Control B for bold, I for italic, U for underline, that sort of thing. You can remove styles, decrease or increase the font size. You can choose the specific font, and as well as color and size and that sort of thing. You've got paragraph formatting, left, center, right, or justified, and you can change styles like normal or headings. You'll see there above, I've got number 2 there, GloboNote. That's I think a heading 1 or heading 2, and there's where you'll choose your numbered lists and your bulleted lists and so on. So yeah, pretty sort of easy. But as I said there, I am still using Obsidian for my main notes, mainly because I want that plain text saving and in a sort of a markdown format. So yes, it doesn't really tick all the boxes when it comes to my ideal sticky notes app, but really I can't actually find that ideal sticky notes app at this stage. If you think there is something there, please leave a comment below and let me know. And as I said here, I'm looking sort of for the longevity of things like data recovery and and that sort of thing, which is why I want plain text format. So this choice really did come down to purely features. It was a stack of features that GloboNote has got, and that's why I thought it might just be interesting to have a look at. And then just to demonstrate here again, I've just summarized some of the various formattings you can do. We've covered some of that already, really. Another interesting feature it's got here, of course, is calculations. This is quite unique. So if you look at something like here, you can even define a variable like rent equals 100, food equals 5 plus 3 plus 2. And then you can calculate rent plus food together and get a result. And this is quite interesting. What you have to do there is highlight everything. Obviously, if it is just a calculation, you just highlight the 5 plus 3 plus 2, but we've got variables here. So you highlight inclusive of the variables and whatever the calculation is, and you just press F2. And it pastes in the answer for you. So yeah, not exactly, I don't know what you'd use that for, but quite useful and quite interesting. I have already discussed about the roll up the notes and so on. You can create groups of notes, and here I really need to show the notes manager. Let me just show you. If you right click here and you go to GloboNote menu, you can see here is notes manager, and this is what I just have to take this off top again, otherwise I'm not going to get everything in the screen, I'm afraid. This is very much what you see with a lot of typical note managers. They often just do it in this format, and if you haven't got the sticky notes, that is. So just to show you, it does actually have groups. You can select groups, and you can even have subgroups. You can see under reference over here, I've also got a subgroup called Linux. So if I've clicked on reference, you'll see there's my couple of notes under reference. And if you click under Linux system, there's the 3 notes that are under Linux system. So quite handy for sorting and organizing and so on. If you need to move these, it's actually as easy as taking your note and just dragging it to whichever folder it's got to go to. And that's quite a nice way of organizing, or different way of organizing, should I say. Then on the the preferences side, if you right click and you choose preferences, you can set preferences for each note as well. Sorry, these things are just opening up on my other screen. But essentially you saw some of these choices already on the first right click menu. There's a preview here as well. You can click the title bar on or off. You can watch the preview here. You can have the creation date on the title bar if you want to. You can have a note border. There you can see a red colored border, and you can change that over there as well. So you can use a border also to indicate certain things. You can not just have the background color of the notes changed or the title bar, but you can even have different border colors set. There is your title of your note if you want to change it. There's your group if you want to change it from here. Background is not really seeming to do anything for me. I'm not too sure why. Transparency, you can watch the note on the right there. You can adjust the transparency if that's something you'd like to have. Before I go into the right here, also if you tick over here, use this preference for all new notes. That is where you would set all these things if that's the way you want a new note to start up immediately. Along with its size over here, it's maybe default colors, that sort of thing. That's where you'd have it on. So obviously it's going to stay off most of the time. It's only if you make a couple of changes and you'd click there and you'd say okay, and then next time they'd all start up that way. But what I want to show over here also is around the color side is quite interesting. You've got profiles. This is the current profile, but there are some other profiles I've set. For example, I've got one set for Linux system stuff, and if I choose that, that's what the Linux system stuff looks like. So again, if you look at this note up here, it's not going to click while I've got this option bar open, but that's the color and everything, or font or whatever you want set for it. So I can go back to current. Obviously, whichever I had, if I've made some changes here, not only can you save it as a default for notes, but you could also here click on save profile. You can see it's just popped up, and you can save it and name it as, like I've done here for Linux system stuff. You can choose a couple of different things, to-dos, urgent, whatever, and give them different borders and outlines and that sort of thing. So profiles is one quick way to quickly choose different preset formats, and the one on the left here, the users for all new notes, is for all default new notes that you start up, irrespective. Then you'd go change the profile. Then to change the colors, you can see here you've got the note border item chosen at the moment, but you can go to title bar and you'll see I've got yellow selected at the moment, but you could change it to, you know, red if you wanted to. Then it's going to look like this over here now. Or let me just put that back again. Or quite interestingly, if you choose the editing area, which is the rest of the note, you'll see here there's two colors. There's yellow, and then I've chosen a lighter color yellow, and you'll see the color graduates towards that color over here. So if I was to take it and make it say maybe, I don't know, blue, it'll graduate now from whatever the yellow color is, your color you've chosen here for background 1 to background 2. So again, quite nifty. You can really customize look and color and feel and so on here quite a lot. And that's obviously just the size if you wanted to adjust, but you can also just drag it with, you know, drag handles. And one last thing before we go off preferences is alarms. You can also enable alarms with snooze time, stop after so many snooze timeouts. You can choose the sound. You can get the note to roll down automatically, in other words, open when the alarm goes off. You can also set it to repeat if you want to say, oh, you've got to select it first, sorry. You could select a note as well to, you know, go off every day, for example, weekly, monthly, yearly, whatever the case is. So there's quite a lot of, you know, options around that side as well. Again, quite a nice handy feature, and it does works 100% on Linux as well. So that is the note preferences. Then you've also got a couple of app preferences themselves. So there's two ways to get to that. You can right click, and on the GloboNote menu you choose it and you get a sort of a compact version of it, or you can right click on the system tray and get the full view. So I can show you both. Unfortunately, the right click on the system tray is not visible on the screen, so I'll just have to drag it in for you. But if you go down to GloboNote menu there, you've got a couple of general options here, like just new note. New from clipboard opens a note and pastes whatever you've got at the clipboard into it. I've shown you Notes Manager already. You can search across all notes. You can bring desktop notes to the front, or you could park desktop notes. Park desktop notes just does a temporary hide. It hides all your notes, but it hasn't hidden them per se, because you'll see here are options here to hide this particular note, park this note, or delete the note, which you don't want to surely do. So if I do the other option, this is off the toolbar. It'll bring this GloboNote preferences up for the app itself. So you can use native decoration on Linux, for example. That brings up the borders, the Linux Windows border around the notes, which you don't really want to see, I think, on sticky notes. You can highlight the active note. You know, there's a couple of other defaults here for notes as well. Support hyperlink detection. What it means is it shows you that if you hold the control key and just click on any HTTP link in the note, it'll open that in the browser for you. You've got a thing to check for updates. There's language, a couple of languages there. And on Linux, there's a couple of look and feel. There might be more on Windows, I'm not sure there. This is just defaults again for the app, things like the date format, time format. You can use simple dates for relative, yesterday, today, creation time. You can insert, you know, that as well, some default colors. You've got the shortcut keys over here that you can set. So those ones that I mentioned earlier, all of those things, you can also change them and, you know, set new ones if you want to as well. The security part was the password. So this is the GloboNote storage password. That'll be when you start up the application. If you want to password protect the whole application, that's for the notes itself, and that's to reset the notes passwords. And you can optionally encrypt or not. I'm always a little bit wary about encryption, because if you lose the application or what you know, want to recover your note later, that's going to be a small problem, quite honestly. then automatically hide inactive protected notes. That just means that it won't by default show the protected notes. You'd have to literally go in and say show protected notes. It just means if you open it up, you won't see them, on the desktop. It's got backup, and you can set the location of the backup. So this could be as well to a Nextcloud or Dropbox folder if you wanted to. You've got settings for automatic backups and counts at cleanups over here as well, which is quite nice. And then this is where you set the main repository location. As I said, that's where I've got it set, but you could set this to any particular drive or wherever you want to have it. So yeah, that's basically the settings. Oh, there's also the editor settings for the how it configures, how it recognizes hyperlinks. I haven't changed. This is all standard still, but these are just the different types of links that it will actually recognize as links. I think I've got a link here. For example, I've got the user's manual. So if I hover over here and I hit the control key, it doesn't really show you, but I think if I write, I thought maybe it'll pop up the link, but it'll open it in the browser for you. And then really the only other thing I just wanted to show basically is that, you can rearrange these any way you want to on your desktop. These you can expand or contract or whatever the case is. So other notes, for example, like say this one, you can drag it over there and you can make it into a smaller, a longer note, whatever you actually want. And if it rolls up, it'll stay that size now. So you can make these quite small. There's also an option that you can set for this one over here called compact roll. So what it means is that it'll always roll it up to a compact size whenever you do a roll-up or an auto roll-up to really minimize the space on the screen. As somebody had said, there wasn't actually an import option that I saw, and the only export option you've got here is to export it to a plain text file. But, again, that's quite handy if you just want to share it to somebody or the contents to somebody. But as I said, you can arrange these any way you want on the screen or the screens that you've got. You'll see this one is a locked note. So you've got to double click it to unlock. It's not a protected note, so it hasn't got a password, but that was a locked note. So it's just so that you don't by accident go and make changes or anything to the note. And that's really pretty well much it. I could talk quite a bit longer about it, I suppose, but it's really just to give a feel for what you can do with it and what it looks like. And yeah, I've been using it for about a year or so, and I've tried a couple of other odds and ends. I think it's Tomboy Notes and K Notes and a couple of odds and ends, but this was pretty feature rich. Does everything I'm sort of looking for, and until, like I said, I can find a sticky notes app that actually links to a markdown file, that would be my ideal. But until I've got that, then this is what I'm really using at the moment. So I hope it was of interest to some of you, and stay safe out there, and I'll see you in my next video.